We were in South Dakota about 2 years ago, and we were doing a scouting day before the opening day of season. And just somehow, some way, my truck was just seeing all the bucks. I mean, it was just like the other vehicle was having a hard time locating deer. And man, I was just seeing bucks in the ditch, bucks on the hill, just all over the place, So it kind of became the joke and kind of like a battle cry that week of like, oh, the buck truck this, the buck truck that, and haha, just kind of laughed it off. Well, then fast forward about 3 months.
No, let's not skip over the rest of that trip.
No, tell me.
So the rest of that trip.
All right, what is up, everybody? Just Mark on the mic on this side of the table, but I've brought reinforcements across from me digitally in our electronic virtual world. You're real to me, gentlemen. I've got Tyler and KC from The Element, and I might miss some things here because it's a lot of things. It's The Element podcast. You guys have your YouTube channel. You've teamed up with the MeatEater crew. You've got the Buck Truck Project. Did I miss it? We're going to dive into all these things, but is there anything else I need to be aware of before we start?
I mean, you're nailing it pretty good, man.
Pretty good.
You're doing a great
there's
job.
A lot of small details, but you don't want to get caught in the weeds too much, right? So.
Right. Well, we're about to go get caught in the weeds right now. So, gentlemen, if you can, real quick, Casey, I'll start with you. We'll go left to right. At least that's how I read. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you're from, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm born and raised in East Texas, which is, if you're across the nation, you might have a certain opinion of what Texas looks like. And where we're from doesn't usually really look like that. Where we're from looks a lot like kind of like maybe the Ozarks with a little bit smaller hills. Like we don't really have a lot of hills here at all, but just big oak trees, big pine trees. It's dairy country. Hay fields, all that. Not a lot of agriculture here. Born and raised here. Married, have a couple kiddos. Pretty heavily involved in youth ministry at my local church, and hunt deer and hogs and turkeys and all kinds of stuff. And also really like to garden a whole lot, although my garden doesn't like me. So at least not right now.
It's environmental, man.
It is, man. Things are changing.
Yeah.
Well, and don't, we're in Wisconsin over here, so don't think I didn't notice that little dairy flex, by the way. So,
yeah. Well, I guess everybody has their own, pride of the milk industry, right? But it's Holstein cattle country down here. We produce a lot of stuff. Now, cheese is not as much the thing. That's kind of more West Texas, but my dad actually worked at the milk plant in Sulphur Springs, Texas for about 15 years. And so, all the local dairies, they, have milk trucks that run and pick up milk. And then he ran an evaporator and they turned it all into powdered milk. And that all got shipped out to the government programs that made all the really kind of fake stuff for the schools. And that's where a lot of that stuff ends up going. That and M&M Mars made a lot of candy, sweet and condensed stuff. So, wow. Yeah, cheese is way better than that. So we make all the unhealthy stuff down here with our dairy.
That's too funny. Tyler, what about you, man? What's a little bit of your backstory?
Yeah, man. Just Casey and I grew up probably 20 minutes apart and never really knew each other till we kind of started doing this thing in 2016, I guess is when we first started kind of hanging out. I'm also married, have 2 kids, and, love to hunt and fish, man. Been doing it my whole life. Just my whole goal, which I think I'm starting to succeed at, is that I can hunt and fish pretty much every day of my life. And that's been the goal. So I'm starting to figure that out a little bit. And it's, obviously I don't get actually out there and hunt and fish every day, but quite a bit. And so super blessed to do that. I mean, I don't have any big dairy cow statues outside of my high school. So I don't have a whole lot of common ground with you, I guess. Both y'all.
So you guys grew up fairly closely together then, but didn't know each other. How did you guys meet? And then maybe how did the Element manifest after that?
This is my favorite story. We met on an internet dating site called farmersonly.com. No, that's actually not the case, but it's a facsimile of it. My wife went to the same high school as him. She's a little bit younger than Tyler. So Tyler's name is kind of renowned around here. He was quite the athlete growing up and played college football at SMU, had a good career. So I'd heard his name because I also was a football player, although of lesser stature in Sulphur Springs. So all this leads to 10 years down the road from high school. My then girlfriend was like, hey, maybe fiance, I don't know who I'm married to now. She was like, hey, this guy also likes to fly fish, because I like to fly fish a whole lot. I lived on the Texas coast at the time. I was a county trapper and just being a bum, just fishing all the time down there. And she's like, hey, this guy from my hometown likes to fly fish. Y'all should hang out. Little did she know she sealed her fate as to what I would be doing pretty much for the rest of my days. It's just spending more time with him than her. So we ended up Facebook messaging back and forth, I think, and lined up a plan for us to go and fish a local river up here for some stripers, and went and kind of met in a Walmart parking lot like all bros do, and decided to hop in the truck and go fishing. And from there planned I guess it was like a 72 hour,
4 days.
4-day turnaround trip to Arizona to go fly fish for not Gila trout, Apache trout. Yeah. So we drove a day, fished for like a day and a half, and then drove back. And then on that trip decided that we could talk good enough to be on a podcast and talk about whitetail hunting. And that's kind of what we did.
Yeah. I'd been thinking about it actually for quite some time, starting a podcast. Actually, if you look at the start date, 18 months prior to that or so is about when I really decided I thought I wanted to do that. And I just happened to come across a guy who could talk to a brick wall pretty well. So, it worked, man. And we really align on a lot of the ways we think about stuff pretty foundationally. So it's pretty easy to talk about stuff with him.
That's awesome, man. I love it. You're like, oh, you like to fly fish? Yeah, I like to fly fish. We should do that. Let's start a podcast about deer hunting.
That's exactly right. No lie. So the whole premise of our relationship was that Tyler was going to come down to the Texas coast and fly fish for redfish with me. And we still pretty much have not done that.
Yeah.
Never have. That was like what our first conversation was about.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the year. I don't know.
Yeah. So but I grew up deer hunting. He did too. That was what my dad would rather hunt deer than anything. And there was a stint where like in high school, I was crazy about waterfowl, and then in college some too, but obviously just playing football, I'm pretty much practicing or meeting like 330 days a year, probably in college football. So I didn't have time to hunt a whole lot, but when I did, I wanted to go duck hunting is what I wanted to do. And I love deer hunting. I deer hunted the whole time. It was kind of number one for a while there. So I'm kind of turning into my dad every day. And I kind of like deer hunting probably a little bit more now, but dude, if I can chase it with a fly rod or a shotgun or a bow, like I'm going to try to do it, and I'm going to love it probably. So it's just where I stand on that.
Man, I hear that. Yeah. Deer hunting and fishing are about two of my most favorite things. Now, you guys, you've hunted a lot of different states, but born and raised Texas. Maybe if we can, let's talk a little bit about hunting in Texas deer hunting culture. Maybe some things that you guys are doing different that's a little outside the box of maybe some other folks.
Yeah, if back to where my dad's taken me deer hunting early on. Same with KC. What you kind of do, especially where we're from, which is kind of northeast Texas, it's east of Dallas a ways. You pretty much are, if you want to get into deer country, you're probably headed west or south, one or the other. And probably if you're heading south, there is a touch of west to it as well. So that's just kind of like, that's the direction everybody from my neck of the woods, our neck of the woods, would head to wherever, which it's a huge state, right? But just and you had deer leases. Even when we were young, everything was deer leases. Texas is kind of a leader in the whole QDM movement, and just generally, like, there's such a rich history and a tradition of deer hunting here that, we tend to lead culturally at times, but then, the world's so global now, it's maybe a little different, but, for several decades, I'd say that. Anyway, we, that was the deal though. It was like when we were young, it was like, man, get out of school early on a Friday. We're going to go, we'll be back Sunday night or whatever, and go for the weekend and hunt on our deer lease. And you're hunting corn feeders. That's what you do in Texas. Pretty much most people are doing that. There's a corn feeder every quarter mile, it seems like. And so, that's basically how I grew up hunting, was at feeders, on leases and that kind of thing. And then when I hunted deer or ducks, it was mostly public stuff,
mostly feeders.
Mostly feeders. And
that's a joke, by the way.
yeah, we got it. Maybe not everybody did.
Statute of limitations is long.
But it was kind of like a contrast there, but we never really thought about it as like, oh, we're going to public land. It was just like, oh, there's birds on the lake, let's go hunt them, but yeah, the deer hunting stuff was really all about the trip and the excitement and the kind of just stuff leading up, the anticipation leading up to like those few weekends you'd get to go, and now I would say like we almost have exclusively hunted public land the last several years on Texas. He hunted a little more public ground than I did growing up. Mm-hmm. But my dad, he works really hard. And I think when he wants to go deer hunting, he's like, I'm going to spend some money and have a lease and not have to mess with dudes coming in there and setting up on me or whatever. So, he's always kind of wanted a lease and had a lease for most of his deer hunting life. So
I killed a lot of hogs on public land throughout my early years, like as a teenager and stuff, but I hunted deer quite a bit and still only killed my first buck on public ground January of 2019. Mm-hmm. So like it's I'm not going to go too far down this road, but everybody likes to think that where they hunt is the hardest place ever. And I don't know if this is or not or whatever, but the details are we don't have much public land and there's not a high deer density either. So it is tough, whether it's the hardest or not, I don't know, but there's just not a great age class or anything. It's all about opportunity, which I'm glad there is that opportunity, there's just not a lot of deer out there or whatever. And also, man, it was kind of weird because I was, let's say, I kind of changed as a deer hunter about 2013. I spent a lot more time in the woods that year and just kind of started to grasp who I wanted to be as a hunter and what I really wanted to get from it. And that was time in the woods and chasing deer that were, bigger, older, more fun to kind of get after. And it wasn't about pulling the trigger all the time. So I was highly influenced by outdoor TV and was passing deer on public ground that I absolutely should not have been passing, And so that's part of the reason why I didn't kill or at least take many shots through some of those times. And then I realized, hey, it's actually fun to shoot things. So let's just, go out there. And if you see something that gets you excited, shoot it and don't think that you have to live by someone else's standards out there. Yeah. But yeah, then that kind of evolved into the year that I got married to my wife. Tyler and I spent some time on Texas Public together. He was like, hey, I hadn't spent a lot of time out there. Why don't you just let me follow you around with a camera and KC will hunt. And I was like, okay, whatever, sure. And he was always a little bit bashful about the camera thing. He's like, I don't know if I don't want you to feel like it's like messing you up. I'm like, whatever. I'm pretty good about being who I am on camera and off camera. So that's not always the greatest thing either.
I mean, a lot of people hunt with their shirt off. I don't see what the problem
is. Exactly. That's a problem I have, man. But that whole year we did a lot of sits together and actually had some pretty good encounters. I missed a really nice Texas public buck and that was kind of like, oh, and then Tyler put together a little bit of video from that and was like, hey, we could, put these on YouTube or whatever. And I'm so thankful for him because he has great vision with this stuff and how we can actually turn it into something. I was just a redneck in the woods with a buddy who had a camera, like I didn't have a clue what we could do or anything, so I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I was going to ask, like, when or how, like, the film element worked its way into things. So, yeah, how do you like that one?
That's good. I love those, dude. Keep them coming.
Yeah, dude.
But, well, hey, I got another one for you when you're talking about what you're trying to get out of hunting and hunting public. And I hunt a mix of public and private. And, oh, man, it is sweet when you get on some private. Like, don't get me wrong, and I enjoy that thoroughly. But then sometimes there is that extra element of just like, it adds a layer to the chess match of, who's going to be there? How am I going to shift? Like, do I need to like go to a different spot, or, what's the pressure been like? And it's kind of fun to layer that in. It's also fun to get out of it though. Like, I was told the story that 2 years ago, I hunted public for like 6 days straight and had some encounters, but, didn't kill a deer. And then I got on a buddy's place and killed a nice buck like the first day,
Yeah. That's the way it goes, man.
And I'm not trying to insinuate that hunting private is just like easy street, and like, because it's not. I mean, it's super challenging too. I hunted private a lot last year and ended up not getting a buck. I had a deflection that still haunts me, but anyway, I don't know. It's all fun stuff though. I mean, I think that's what I love about deer hunting is like every place is different, every state is different. Public's awesome in its own right, private's amazing in its own right, and you just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah, it's strange how people like to be in certain camps, and you can see just a polarized society on so many different topics that we live in today, and our simple brains actually aren't made to intake all this stuff, but like we just want to have this like innate nature to want to be tribal about things. So it's funny to hear, and I'm glad there is a sentiment out there that we should probably keep pushing, that like the statement of hunting private or hunting public is not this is better than that. It's just different aspects of all the same thing that we enjoy,
Right.
And I think that's because we kind of got looped into that, whatever you want to call it, public land movement or whatever, because we hunt a lot of public land out of necessity, because I can't travel to all these states and afford to get private access and all of it. So that's what you do, right? But it's never a statement of, hey, the public is where it's at. That's the thing you should be doing. It's just like, hey, it's an opportunity. Let's go do it. Otherwise, you're going to sit at home or whatever. I appreciate the opportunity that it brings, but it doesn't make you like cooler than the other guy.
No way, man. I mean, there's different. There's different aspects to anything, and it's funny. Like, you do hear that sentiment sometimes, and like part of my public land strategy at times is creeping awfully close to that private, that's essentially like a sanctuary, like you need both, and they're both important for different reasons. So, I think I wish we could all get in the camp of deer hunting is awesome, and then just leave it at that. Do what you want.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. It's important. It would be important for us to do that. I think, that's there's strength in numbers, man. And, to be honest, I think you probably know at Vortex, there are certain things that society wants to censor, and hunting might be one of those things. So, we should be careful.
Like in the school system. That's if you watch
going on right.
If you've watched the news in the last week or so. Cool, man. So you guys are doing the podcast. What's for people that might want to check it out that haven't, which I know a lot of people have, what's the vibe of the podcast? Like, what would you say is like the, if a person tuned in, they'd kind of get X, Y, or Z from it?
Yeah. Generally, the way that this started is it wasn't called, deer hunting or the element, outdoors or whatever. It was, the element is a general term so that we could kind of do what we always enjoyed on video and through podcasts, and we could talk about and discuss fly fishing or deer hunting, those kind of things. So while certainly we wanted to be able to be general like that, there's absolutely a lot of guys out there that like to hear about deer hunting, and we like to do it a lot, right? So, and we spend the majority of our fall doing that anyway. So I would say that, probably like 85% of our podcast is about whitetail deer hunting. And so it's generally me and KC talking. We don't have a whole lot of guests usually. It's hard to get people on, and Casey and I spend enough time outdoors and together that we can pretty much chat about all kinds of stuff. And so we'll just go through a lot of times pretty detailed, like observation and application to what we've been seeing in the field and those kind of things, or what we might like a particular subject as well that we've been wanting to talk about. And every once in a while in the summertime, we'll sprinkle in fly fishing and stuff like that, and just travel type stuff, So yeah, that's kind of it. If you're not a whitetail nerd, you may not like it, but you might get a little bit here and there.
I like it. You ever see the movie The Fifth Element?
I can recognize the poster. Isn't it Antonio Banderas?
Oh man, I can't. It's an older movie. It's like it's a little weird. So yeah, I like your guys' videos better.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate that, man.
It's like a sci-fi thing. It just it popped in my head. But cool. So okay, covered that. Check. Recently, I'd say you guys, like I think we touched on it a little bit earlier, but you guys teamed up with the MeatEater crew, starting kind of like a production called the Buck Truck. So where did this idea come from? How did it end up where it is now? And then I think so. I watched all the episodes, at least that were live, and we'll get to maybe some lessons learned along the way, and maybe provide a few deer tips, because I know I could use some of those. So
okay, so it's pretty like normal for hunters to associate a lot of what they do with their vehicle, right? I mean, everybody kind of has a truck they take to, or car or whatever, to their hunting spot. And it's kind of like a normal thing for people to do that you might not think about too much. Well, we were in South Dakota about 2 years ago, and we're doing a scouting day before the opening day of season. And just somehow, some way, my truck was just seeing all the bucks. I mean, it was just like the other vehicle was having a hard time locating deer. And man, I was just seeing bucks in the ditch, bucks on the hill, just all over the place, So it kind of became the joke and kind of like a battle cry that week of like, oh, the buck truck this, the buck truck that, and I just kind of laughed it off. Well, then fast forward about 3 months.
No, let's not skip over the rest of that trip.
No, tell me.
So the rest of that trip, he got COVID.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I can say that on here, but y'all bleep it out if you need to. He had that disease or whatever you want to call it, and then our friend who hunts with us, Hunter. He's exactly opposite of a morning person, whatever that is, a night owl, And so he didn't like to get up in the morning. This dude is like just hawking, lung every night pretty much. And so they like became buddies that would like get up late and move around late in the morning, wouldn't go hunting, sometimes. And they just get out in that truck and try to see them, at least learn something or whatever. And then they were still seeing lots of bucks out of the truck.
Like try to get in the vehicle with us one morning last night.
Yeah. But then, so it was like solidified through that, because they were driving around in prime time in the morning seeing bucks, Mm-hmm. So it got even better. And then a few months later.
So a few months later, so at that point in time, Tyler and I hadn't really split up, but we had the ability to have guys with us to run camera. Because for a long, long time, what we did is we filmed each other do stuff, right? And that was just kind of the way we had to do stuff. Well, we decided to maximize our efforts for most of that season and really make an effort to put together some good videos. And we did. Well, late in December, I still had a deer tag in a state north of us up here. And it was like kind of a weird time of year to hunt, right? It's like December 27th or 8th, we decide like, let's just go try, I mean, I spent the money on the license, haven't shot a deer. I got some pretty good intel from hunting there earlier in the year. So we went back, and the OGs, the A team got together, and Tyler filmed me on a hunt, and I ended up shooting a really, really nice buck on December 30th, about near in the middle of a cattle pen. Like, it was a weird deal. Yeah, this deer was going to a cattle trough to drink because it's a real bad drought. And I literally set up
double drops, double ear tags.
Yeah, pretty much. No, actually, he didn't have any ears. This is weird. He's a really old bruiser. It's like one whole ear was gone. Like he had just been fighting. Yeah, it was a weird buck. He's a mainframe 8 without brows. I think they just got worn down. He wasn't like a scorer, but just a big old toad. And I shot him literally he was about to jump the gate to go into the cattle pen when I shot him at like 14 yards. It was epic. But after that, that's when we were like, oh, buck truck. You know? We were like, okay, well, this is going to be a thing. And that's kind of how we decided to frame that series, because it's pretty relatable for a lot of guys, I think, where you kind of hop in the truck with a buddy, you head somewhere and you hunt out of the truck the whole time. You're not shooting them out the window, but like it is your dare I say, metaphorical way of getting places, but actually your physical way of getting places and going to do stuff, right? It's your lifeline. You got your bow, you got your optics, you got your food, you got your water, you got even sometimes your sleeping place is in the truck, you know, like it's a thing people do.
I mean, yeah, you're so right. I mean, it's your horse. It can be your accommodations. It can be everything. And I mean, sometimes you spot them from the truck, and that's just the way it is. So
yeah. I love it. Believe me, whenever you can have like a hot drink when it's 25 outside and look at deer out of the truck,
that's
the
right up your alley,
it's bad to the bone.
One time I was hunting, and we hunted 4 days on horseback, and we were like driving in, getting on the horses and riding all day. And I think it was like the 5th day or something like that. We got a late start and we're driving in, and I spotted a buck off the road on public, and I'm like, man, we've been hunting hard. I'm like, I'm gonna go shoot this thing. So I walked up the hill on the public and I shot him.
Yeah, me too. You're my kind of guy, dude. That's what I'm all about, man. It's like there's a gift there. You should just go and take it, you know. I mean,
I felt better about it knowing that we'd hunted hard already, you know, but that was like, it was kind of one of those, it was a little bit of a gimme situation, but I wasn't gonna turn it down. That's for sure.
Yeah. I like to say you don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Oh,
I don't know if you know that
funny,
one, but that's
funny.
it. That's right. Like,
y'all
sooner or later, it's going to
debating.
be real hard. So you might as well take the easy ones when they come.
Oh,
Mark,
yeah.
you have kids?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, so y'all are just gonna keep with these dad jokes. Then,
That's
right?
it, man.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
Oh man, I came fully loaded, man. So let's go.
Let's go, dude. I love them.
Awesome. Well, so that's how I guess the buck truck and the series got its name. Let's talk about the hunts that you guys went on and documented. Some really cool stuff. Diverse places, diverse landscapes. Diverse tactics, sometimes a lot of tactics rolled up in a single hunt. If we can, let's go high level, start to finish, and talk about your season, those hunts, and a little bit about what transpired and the things that you learned maybe from each of those hunts.
Yeah, it's a good question, man. We ended up with 7 episodes. Are they all from different locations? I mean, they're all from different locations, but all from different states. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So we started out in Nebraska, actually, and he and I doubled on the same night. It was just one of the coolest nights ever, you know. But we really were seeing last year was just a major drought across like a huge portion, especially of like the central United States, you know, Midwest, Plains, Texas. I mean, north to south, it was a big swath. And so like water was definitely a factor in a lot of our early season stuff, but it wasn't necessarily the factor. Like I would say that we weren't shooting them off of water holes. We thought we might, and we actually, Casey had some encounters for sure.
I was trying in Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, it was about to come together there, and then we ended up on a bed to food pattern, killing deer, and it worked great. You know, who knows if they were actually headed to water we didn't know, you know, somewhere that we didn't see or whatever. But
one of the funny things about a drought is that if you're short on water, you're short on food too.
Yeah,
because that's what makes the herbaceous browse that the deer are eating grow. Well, it just so happens if you can find some sort of unnatural water source that might be watering some crops or something, like that's the only green food in the area. You know, like that's where they're going to go. So that's pretty much what we set up on. We hiked way back in, like a backpack hunt for deer almost, but we're hiking in and out, and we shot on the first evening. And,
thankfully, I didn't want to hike in and out there too many times, you know. But yeah, that's that was definitely, it's a good point that he makes, is that we realized through that trip that the food was actually still a big issue, right? It's not just like you can kill them on water, but you also, they also need food, and they're having to go they're really having to rely, which this is a thing when you're hunting public land, you don't have crops a lot of times to hunt directly, right? It's not on the property you're hunting. Sometimes it borders, like we talked about earlier, you might be hunting close to private or whatever, but you might not as well. So you have to figure out, like, even if there's a pivot like a mile off of public, you might need to end up there. I mean, not there, but hunting deer that are moving to there at night, essentially. So those deer will move a mile. It's no big deal to them usually, so but you really got to dial in, like, where are they coming from, where are they bedded, and you got to probably be pretty close to it. So that was not just Nebraska, but we ended up going to South Dakota.
First off, hold on. Tyler shot a monster in Nebraska. So we were set up like 80 or 90 yards apart, like hearing distance of bows going off. I shoot mine and they think they hear it. And I shot a really beautiful buck. He is probably 2 or 3 year old, not a monster, but a deer I was super excited about, kind of non-typical side. I was like, all right, we're giving high fives. Me and Greg were, and then I hear, or like the sound of Tyler's bow go off like 10 minutes later.
Yeah.
And I was like, I bet he shot a bigger deer than me. Well, little did I know it was like a wall hanging type deer. Like he shot it, and it was like, dude, he had like the neck of a hog ham. They're just like huge already on late September. It was wild. So that kind of set the tone for the season, just as to what we could actually accomplish on some of these trips, and then from there, like you said, we rolled up to South Dakota.
Yeah. And it was a much different year than the year before for us in South Dakota, where just not lush, similar conditions. So we're still trying to focus on like maybe low areas that have received some runoff whenever they've had rain, and snowberry or whatever it might be that you can find that they're browsing on, and those kind of things were helpful. And then also willows were huge, because if everybody knows, a lot of people would know that willows grow in low-lying areas where they're going to gather water around creek systems, lake bottoms, whatever they might be around ponds and those kind of things. Well, those small willows seem to be pretty good browse for the deer as well. I watched a buck that I bedded there in South Dakota just browse willows, and then also at the same time, you're talking about a thick area for bedding as well. He ended up bedding there. In day 2, I got a shot at him, messed the shot up bad. We won't go into the details, but I became a bird hunter on that trip for sure. So I think KC figured out some really cool stuff later.
Well, actually, thanks to you. So I tend to be the guy who can find success on a trip, but I string it out way longer than I have to. And I would like to be the guy who gets to be camp cook from time to time, because I enjoy my time in the kitchen. However, I had to rely on Tyler glassing up a buck at like 1.5 miles for me. And then we went in one morning trying to hunt that deer that was on the backside of a cornfield, messed that up. And then having to leave out that far back in there, I found a little bedding pocket where we bumped like 5 bucks out of this little just hole that was on the backside of another cornfield. Went in there the next morning and set up and shot a buck on the food to bed pattern where he was going back to his bed. He was browsing plum leaves all the way back, just hammering like it was a buffet line, just eating those things. And it was just a picturesque, like, I love hunting up north because you actually get an autumn, whereas down here, things are actually brown before the fall. So it's just like the leaves just fall down, brown and crunchy. But like up there, you get the golds and the greens and the yellows and all that. It's just like, that was the most picturesque deer I killed, because it was beautiful, because it was a morning setup. So cold front day, sun comes up, and it's just, everything just went just according to plan. Like it was like one of those situations where I love it. This is so cheesy, right? It's the 18 thing. I love it when the plan comes together, and that's exactly what we did. We figured something out, made a plan, and executed it, and put a deer on the ground. Yeah, it was sick.
I think the overall high level thought there too is that we learned from him having that situation is that KC has no give up at all. Like he just, dude, it'll be 11 p.m. We're going to get in at 2 a.m, get home, not going to even see our kids. And he's out there about near knocked, walking back to the truck, just like ready to shoot something, I can't make it, it's going to happen here at the last minute, that's him. So he doesn't give up. And I think that's a good point to kind of consider here is just to not give up, continue to push through in that hunt. That's where a lot of success comes from. And in that case, it was that morning where he could have walked the easy way out, and he walked a big long loop, and that's where he found those bucks. So
when I love it. When you kicked those bucks out, when you went back in, how, like, were you hunting like where you kicked those bucks out and then just beat them back there in the morning?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, we got in there early that day, which is not something I'm great at. I usually am like 10 minutes late to the woods kind of guy, kind of setting sticks in the daylight, but got in there real early, had the wind on that situation. I knew where their destination food source was. And, truth be told, we saw a giant in there, and I did not shoot that deer, but I shot a really nice 8-point. And day 6, I wasn't going to pass a good quality racked buck, and
tasty one too,
dude. Yeah, I'm not trying to put a spotlight on any states, but in general, the deer more further north taste better than our deer. They have like a redder quality of their meat, like it's a real thing. Like they're so
more
good.
Fat content too.
And so this buck was super fat, but yeah, kind of went in there, set up in the tree. So when I bumped those deer, I glassed all that area up. Didn't go in there and stomp it up, but I glassed it up and picked out a tree, and then got on Onyx and like made a pin on the tree I wanted to get to, and then plotted a course in there that I thought would be really safe. Hung in the tree. As it got daylight, realized I couldn't see to that edge of those plums and get a shot like I wanted to. So I readjusted my saddle platform and got up a little higher in the tree, and it was just like the move that I had to make, and just shot that deer at 37 yards without him knowing we were there.
Man, I think there's so much stuff wrapped up in that. Like you said, Tyler, just the perseverance, and it's tough as a hunt grinds on. Like, you're amped up day one. You just anticipation is high. You're not tired. You're not worn out. Maybe a little discouraged. But man, I mean, and I've had it happen both ways, but I mean, it can be the first 30 seconds or the last 30 seconds and anything in between. And yeah, and that's a challenge, man, to stay positive, stay focused, not be like, dude, let's just go back. Let's go eat, or, let's call it early.
I mean, he is the optimism, man, like for the element. Like, I mean, I consider myself a realist, but in the past I would consider myself a realist, but in all actuality, I feel like I was at times pessimistic, you know what I mean? And so, he's just super, like, never gets down hardly ever, and just he makes this thing like go late in the hunts whenever
you make a good
tired.
Point too. He said, like, Tyler can tell if I'm getting sick, because then I'll be like kind of moaning around, it's like, man, you're getting sick or something's wrong. And sure enough, the next day I'll be like,
we encountered that later on. We ended up in Illinois hunting a really awesome private farm later in October after that South Dakota hunt, and the farm was awesome, but it was the worst hunt I've ever been on. I mean, it was terrible. We hunted 7 days, I think, and KC killed like a last minute buck again. And I mean, I hardly saw deer.
Yeah, night of the 7th day. Like, there's almost not a story to tell, because it was just Groundhog Day for 5 days straight.
I almost killed the same night too, about the same time. We had a buck get up from bedding. I was hunting marsh stuff, and had finally squeezed in on where I thought some bucks would be, and almost got it done, but we got caught setting up. I think it was so quiet, in that marsh, and there's just willows everywhere. We're actually hanging in a larger willow, and we got caught. And so, but then I found out that he had shot one, it's a dramatic sequence of events on video there.
Insane.
Yeah.
I try to not be a dramatic type person, but the woods and hunting provides plenty of that, because, I mean, you think about the cycle of what goes on out there. Like, every day in a deer's life is dramatic, right? So we shouldn't expect anything less whenever we go out there and hunt them. I mean, they're getting killed by tooth, claw, and fang, right? So that's just the way it goes when we're hunting them. And I had a situation where we set up close to a buck's bed. He got up, heard him get up out of the bed like at 80 yards in a marsh. He was walking to a cornfield. We're hunting on the edge of a small waterway that leads down to a beaver pond. And I'm thinking, and I see this deer, or actually Greg sees the deer at like 50 yards. And he's like, giant buck right here. and it was a really nice like crab claw 10, like a deer. Like I was stoked to shoot on the 7th night of hunting, right? And like, oh, we got this money in the bank. He's going to follow this waterway right down to us. And he walks out, gets a drink, and I'm like, okay, he's going to turn. I'm going to shoot him at 25 right here. I've got rangefinder on everything. I'm ready to go. Well, he just decides to like about near swim the waterway and just go just complete terrible direction for me. I'm hunting out of a saddle. So it's like that 5 o'clock spot that's so hard to shoot at, right? And it's so still, I can't readjust. I just have to live with what I've got. And I can't actually even see him at this point in time. I'm grunting away from the deer, and Greg is telling me what's going on behind us. And I'm grunting the deer back to us to what I think is 30 yards. I draw my bow, and how did it work? Somehow or another in there, I dropped my grunt call while the deer's like got us pegged in the tree.
Good.
And it actually gave me the opportunity. He looked at that thing hit the ground, and it gave me the opportunity to draw on the deer without him seeing me draw. It was like, I would never use it as a tactic, but it worked. You know what I mean? Like, and he just looked at it like, what was that? And drew my bow, shot, ends up the deer is about 10 yards closer than I think he is. I end up hitting him high in the neck, and thankfully I hit vital things, and it put him down. It's just as a hunter, you just kind of have to live with sometimes, especially bow hunting. You're not always going to hit him where you want to, and thankfully we found him quick. He didn't go too far, but yeah, just super dramatic situation. Excuse me, and thankful to again stretch it out, but I actually have success at the very end of it, And no lie, we were like scrambling, went and got a motel that night, like roach motel type, you know what I mean? And at like 2 a.m. and got 6 hours of sleep maybe, and hit the road the next morning. It's just so many times it goes that way for me.
Well, you're definitely getting the most out of every hunt, and it's one of those things where when it does work out like that, you're like, it's the best. I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, we got to hunt every day. We hunted hard. We had trials, tribulations, and the payoff is like all that much greater. But before that, though, it's like, man, we got so much time. We got so much invested. Like, maybe I messed this up, and you're kicking yourself a little bit. And not that you're never like necessarily like down or don't want to be. It's all part of it, and you know it. But man, sometimes in the process, it can be a struggle. But then when it works out, and actually because it doesn't work out sometimes, that's what keeps us going. I mean, it's the ones that get away that to me are the ones that keep you going as much as the ones that you get.
Absolutely, man. If you killed them every time, you'd get bored with it. I think, I don't know. I think if it was normal for you to be super successful and shoot big deer every time, you wouldn't want to do it after some time. I mean, it's truly a good lesson a lot of times to mess something up or to, leave there without a deer. It's just kind of hard to eat that sometimes when you got, maybe 1,000 or more bucks in a hunt, so.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. I mean, it's just spot on. It's like, if it wasn't hard, we wouldn't be interested in it. We wouldn't be having this podcast right now. You guys wouldn't have a podcast or want to document or share your passion or, be thinking about deer 24/7, or hunting in general. Like, you wouldn't do that if it was, you might still go because you're like, oh, I like to eat deer meat or I like to eat ducks or whatever. But it wouldn't have the same. I don't think it would consume us the same way.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Absolutely.
It's a good point. We don't, we actually ended up, from there coming home on such a hard trip. And it was like pretty much a quick reset. And then we're headed back, on the road again. And that's what we were
home less than 2 days.
Yeah.
We did laundry and left.
I mean, the season was tough, man. I mean, we really did get after it pretty hard and usually that's crazy, but Casey kind of alluded to this earlier, but about the first week in November, which is probably the worst week for this to happen, one of us will get sick almost every year, it seems like. And then if one of us gets sick, there's 4 other dudes that are probably going to get sick in the month of November. And because we're just in trucks together and you just got to do it, you just, in our position, you just have to be tough pretty much and go out. Like you just can't hardly sit during the rut. And so, and I wouldn't want to either. Like, dude, I hunted ducks when I was in high school. I can remember we had this spot. It was so good, man. And there were so many birds piled into it. And I think it was the last day of the season. And I had like 105 temperature. I was shaking like crazy. And I was like, ain't no way I'm missing this. I went out there and hunted, but same thing with us, still, whether we were doing it, for fun or doing it for, for a living or whatever. So, but anyway, we went to Kansas in early November, and KC and Michael both got pretty sick.
Yeah. But you know how I talked about being like the last minute killer or whatever? Tyler like would prove to be the opposite on that trip. Dude like had some historical data on a place up there and went in. We were kind of joking about it because we knew nobody had been on the property hunting or anything.
It was 80 degrees.
Yeah, it's 80. If you're a whitetail hunter, you remember the rut this year was just kind of warm. It's kind of tough, and so we did not have the cold fronts that we needed to make things rock and roll. Well, Tyler goes in, knowing that there are some big bucks in the area, and we were joking about like, dude, it's like the first time in type seat. You're going to kill a deer the first night while we're here. What happens? Dude just smokes like, just a barrel chested old, how old? 8.5 years old?
Yeah, we my dad's been on this place for a long time, and I have footage of this deer from 2016, I think, as what I think was a 3-year-old. If that math, I don't feel like doing the math right now, but it's whatever that math is. He's a 2 or 3-year-old in 2016. So, and then I shot him in 2022. But other than that, like the only other way, I don't have any like years to bridge the gap necessarily, because I haven't run a bunch of cameras. But last year we had some pictures of him, and this year he was actually smaller this year. And I don't think it was as much to do with the drought as it was his age, but he was just, the biggest bodied deer I've ever shot. Just a huge deer. Already busted up on November 1st, and had missing like brow tines and a piece of a G2, I think, on one side. But just awesome buck. And then, this was a challenge for us with the buck truck thing. Is in the past, we just kind of like gone wherever you feel a tag. Hey, take off, man. Go to your next state or go home for a bit and come back and do something else, whatever. And with this, it was like, this is now also a production where 2 dudes are hunting together. And so it can't be buck truck if we leave each other, So I sat in camp until November 5th.
Yeah, I was feeling bad, because like Tyler is just wasting his first week of November, like the rut dates, waiting on me to find a deer to shoot. And I'm in despair because I'm hunting public, and there's like not a lot of ground where I was. And there was like one shooter buck that we ended up bumping on a stalk. And after that, wind shifted, and it was just like, I can't even hunt there because it's bad. So I'm like belly aching, and we do the thing we just say we're not going to do. We get on the phones and start calling landowners, just trying to get permission somewhere. And sure enough, this guy, he's Mr. Organized, right? He's got like a landowner's number from like 6 years back, and had saved the guy's dad's name and like where he went to college and stuff. So he'd have stuff to talk about, which is a great tip, right? Like, that stuff matters, networking, and so he calls the guy, and sure enough, pops like a bad to the bone permission for us. Just big old property, no trees though. The guy's like, ain't no trees out there. I hope like, that's all right.
He was like telling us we couldn't bow hunt it because there wasn't any trees. And I was like, how do I say this without sounding like pompous? But I told him I killed a deer on the ground last year, and I was kind of like, oh, it was super fun, man. I'd love a chance to do it again, or whatever. Really talking for him, but just kind of saying like, hey, we have a guy that needs to shoot a deer,
Yeah. And so we go out like, renewed spirits, right? We're gonna go out there and scout this place. We're fired up. We're gonna go hang a trail camera. We go out there to kind of like put some boots on the dirt and walk around. Tyler from a distance goes, wow, showing me big rack. I'll run up there. We put spotter on a giant buck on the south fence line that's chasing does around. like we're stoked, right? Tomorrow is going to be the day. It's like the one little cold front that happens in November. It was like on the 5th, I think. That was that morning, that the following day. And we go to hang that camera right before we leave the property. And I feel something down deep that is not good. And so I have to scramble around to find some papers out in the middle of this pasture. And I'm like, oh, man, that was bad. Well, sure enough, we get back to camp and it just doesn't stop. And for the next 8-10 hours, I'm just been over sick, laying in the bed. I don't want to be too descriptive, but it's as bad as it gets for stomach sickness. And so I'm just laying there in the bed, like, I pray a lot, and but there's not a better time to say some prayers than whenever you're just debilitated, laying in the dark and can't sleep, right? And I'm asking, God, like, why in my most enjoyable time of the year am I dealing with this? And somehow, some way, I around, I don't know, 3:30 a.m. start to feel a little bit better. Drink some water, you can keep it down. I set my alarm for like 5:45 just to see, and sure enough, I woke up. I was okay. Went upstairs, and nobody could believe I was standing. And I was like, "Hey, I'm a little bit late," which I'm used to, so it wasn't a big deal. Like, let's go. And we go out there, and I can tell I'm weak, but it's fine. I'm not going to die, And so we go out there, drink a little water. So you know what? We're just going to sit up here on the hill, glass a little bit, and maybe make a move on something if we see it. But I got to be out here. I mean, it's like super frosty, beautiful morning. Have a good wind direction. You just got to go no matter what. I mean, it's November 5th. Like, you got to be hunting. Go out, and sure enough, glass up a buck. I can't tell. He's like 500 yards away, and I'm looking through 10 by 42, so I can't really see too much, but I can tell it's a deer I want to get a better look at. 500 yards is a long way. Take my rattling antlers and just try to break them, and sure enough, that deer whips his head around and proceeds to just march across the valley up to where we are. We run down the hill to get a better ambush point. And long story short, I ended up shooting the biggest deer of my life from the ground at like 32 yards after I was the sickest I've probably ever been in my life. And, retrospectively, I could tell that, at least in my belief, I was growing too much in my own pride and my own abilities of doing things. And God needed to show me that, hey, man, just stop trying so hard and just enjoy this stuff, and it'll come, or it might not. But in that case, it did. And I was thankful, I just, in general, feeling too good about your own self is not a good thing. Pride is not good for any man, right? It's a good way to get caught up in something you don't need to be in. And thankfully, I learned my lesson and also got to shoot the biggest deer of my life. Thanks to this guy, partially, because he was the guy that made the call that got me out there. So very thankful for that.
That is awesome, man. I mean, so much on that one too. It's like, don't be afraid, when you start running out of options, maybe try and make some options. And sometimes, I don't know. I mean, people have different comfort levels of like asking for permission. Like, I swear, I think my heart beats harder when I knock on a door than when I have a big deer in front of me.
Mm-hmm. Dude, I'm telling you, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just want to identify with exactly what you're saying here, because you already don't have permission on the place, but just the thought of somebody telling you no just hurts so bad,
And you don't want to bug somebody, and you're asking essentially, I always feel like take pity on me,
Exactly.
I'm trying to kill a deer.
That's right.
But it does work, and you definitely, you can get different responses. We were hunting turkeys a couple years ago, and I went to knock on a door, which I knew in my heart of hearts it was going to be a no. I mean, like, probably everybody in the world knocked. I mean, it was like a wonderland of turkeys in their yard behind them, and deer are like frolicking about. And I'm like, but I gotta ask. I'm like, I have to. I got to the door, and the door was like, it said like, no hunting, like, don't ask or something. Like, okay, but sometimes it works. Conversely, like, I mean, sometimes you get a yes, and you're like, I can't believe I got a yes, and you meet the nicest person, and they're like, oh yeah, knock yourself out. out. You know, I don't know if there's anything back there. And I'm like, oh, I think there's probably something back there. So, you know, but you don't know until you ask, but it isn't easy. And that's a tough thing to suck it up and, you know, walk down the driveway and interrupt somebody's day potentially or whatever. But I mean, obviously that worked out. And I mean, the other thing there too is like, you don't want to be unsafe or, you know, maybe get yourself in a worse position health-wise, but that'd have been awfully easy to not hunt that morning. I think a lot of people don't hunt that. I don't know if I hunt that morning. I'd be like, dude, I need to like recoup, you know, push some fluids, get back on track, and we'll hunt the evening. And you didn't do that, and it paid off in a big way. And I think that's cool too.
Yeah, thanks, man. I don't know if I would do it again, but I did it that time, you know. Like, hopefully, I have the guts to go out there, you know, in every situation like that. But yeah, I don't know that you only get. I'm a cheese ball, man. I don't know if y'all know that, but like you only get so many November 5ths. You know what I mean? Like, and
true that.
I'm in my 30s, and when I'm in my 50s, I probably won't be able to do that. I don't know. I mean, I hope to be in good shape, but you know, as you get older, stuff like that hits you harder, you know, and you just can't take that for granted that you'll just have another season, you know, so go out there and get after it.
Yep. I mean, so is that your hot tip? Just get violently ill and then suck it up, go shoot a giant deer. Okay. Good.
Yeah. I mean, there's a trend in the element for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Because the year before, Tyler killed the biggest buck of his life after 10 days of violent illness.
Oh,
so
it was 6.5 days, but 10 days of hunting. And I mean, it was the worst sickness. Like if you combine time and like violence, that was the worst sickness ever.
Brutal.
Yeah. And so I finally got to feeling decent on November 11th and, just shot a absolute, I mean, just smoker. I think he had 4 or 5 kickers off of his tines and just, I mean, huge deer. So,
golly, that's crazy.
It's a trend, man. I mean, I don't know if I want to keep taking that sickness just to shoot big deer. You know, I mean, I like shooting like 115-inch deer too, and not being sick. So I'll be fine with those too, you know. So maybe like one of the camera guys can get violently sick and shoot his biggest deer.
Oh, that happened. So within all that sickness too, Michael, one of our guys who runs camera for us, got sick in the back seat of the buck truck. So
the night I shot my deer.
Yeah, the night you shot your deer. So that was cool. The buck truck.
Has it been cleaned since he got sick?
He didn't clean it. Which should be the rule, right? Like a man should clean up his own situation.
Yeah, well, maybe that means he's a kid.
Maybe so. Maybe
you guys
from there
might need to like bleach and fumigate that thing or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it needs work for sure.
It needs some stuff. In fact, I got to do that tonight.
That is the buck truck too, man.
That's what makes it though. Yeah. From there, we cruised down to Oklahoma.
If you can't tell, KC shot 5 deer in like a month and a half.
Yeah, it was insane. We went down to Oklahoma and experienced more of that hot rut, and not the good kind, but the bad kind, and really struggled to put eyes on deer. And again, I think historical data is pretty much what killed me a deer on that trip. I went into a place that I had good hunts in the past. It wasn't a great morning where I was running a little bit late. Funny enough, Tyler was sick at this time, had spent some time in the parking lot that night, expelling some things, and went out on a muggy, foggy morning. I did, and was hanging in a tree and had just gotten set, and looked down, and there was a sapling just wisping back and forth about 80 yards away. And I told Greg, I was like, hey, something's up with that. That's not a natural thing to happen. And sure enough, a giant mainframe 8-point walked to like 7 yards and just looked at us in the tree. And thankfully didn't spook. And he kind of made a semicircle out, and I shot him at 15 yards. And I will take those kind of chip shots anytime that they are given to me, please, because those long distance shots are kind of tough. But that was the biggest body deer I've ever shot. We didn't weigh him, but I don't know. But that's definitely, I mean, he still looks like it. I got him mounted. Definitely looks like it on my wall too. Just a huge body, big fat sucker. And then
all those videos are out on MeatEater's channel. They're you may not, after these stories, need to actually go watch them because you probably got all the details you want. But we have 2 more coming out in the next couple months that are from last season. One with Clay Newcomb in Arkansas, really fun episode that's going to be releasing in September, I think. And then in October, Mark Kenyon came to Texas to hang out and hunt with us, and just to, be razzled quite a bit. He makes food.
That's awesome. No, man, I would say to anybody that's listening to this, all it does is compliment the videos, because they're impressive. They're fun hunts. There's lots to learn there. I mean, even in that last one, it might be like somebody like, well, yeah, of course, you spot movement like that in the brush, but like to some people that might not be like an intuitive thing to look for. Like, you don't see a deer, you just see a branch, going like this. And it's like, oh, wait, maybe I better put the binos up. I spotted a buck a couple of years ago just that same way. I was like, what the heck is going on now? I'm like, oh, God, that's a buck.
Yeah.
And sure, that'll change your day real quick.
Oh, yeah, guarantee you. And I don't know if this is good or bad for your business, but I use my rangefinder in that situation as my optic too, because I have that little razor, I think it's 7 power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, in close quarters like that thing works pretty good, and you can just pop your ranges while you're looking. And it's exactly what I did. I put my rangefinder up because it didn't want to do too much motion. I, had a chest harness. I didn't want to get the binos out and have to be ranging stuff, and looked up and I could see a main beam going. You talk about something fire you up, and you just see a main beam, like, get me going, man. And from there things happen quick. It's put the rangefinder down and get the bow time. Like sometimes you gotta make decisions quick like that. Like if I didn't have my bow in my hand, we were found out if I was trying to reach for my bow at that point in time.
For sure. I mean, I think that's a hot tip too, is keep your rangefinder at the ready. Invest in a rangefinder that has quality optics, because I use mine exactly the same way, whether I'm, hunting elk in the timber or, whitetail hunting. I mean, I use my binoculars when I can. That's like the superior glassing optic, right?
Yes.
But there's no question, like you said, you got your bow in one hand, you get that rangefinder. If it's just out and at the ready, you can be very subtle with it. And yeah, you might not want to put it on a tripod and glass for coos deer for 10 hours, but it's going to give you the look that you need and the information that you need to go, yep, that's a deer, or yep, that's a buck. And then you can then, like you said, you're ready to range, so you can click it if you need to, or you can just slide it back in where it needs to go. But like you said, it's quieter, it's a little more subtle. It's going to get you the information you need in that scenario. And, hopefully you're drawing your bow in pretty short order afterwards.
Yeah, sure enough, man. It's exactly what happened. For sure.
That is awesome.
And, by the way, we are thankful for Vortex help with bug truck stuff. It's pretty cool to be able to make that go and to make
huge, really, man,
a dream of ours come together. Like that for me was the best season of my life, and I couldn't have done it without the help. So thank y'all very much.
Yeah,
man, we're more than happy to. I mean, we get excited about good people doing cool things that align with what we're about, and you guys are creating some very cool, like it's exciting, it's entertaining, but it's also educational content. And so yeah, we appreciate you guys as well. And I actually I've been writing things down. You're like coming up with your tips, and I've been writing some things down. Like one thing that I thought was really cool about your first hunt was like the proximity. Like you guys are 90 yards apart, set up. I mean, in most places you are going to be able to see each other, and yet you're seeing different deer and both having quality hunts, not, messing each other up. That was a cool thing. And I think something that, people might be able to take away, like if you're hunting with somebody else, you can actually still hunt in pretty close proximity but both still have quality hunts. So maybe not everywhere, but if the place is right, you can do that.
I think there's a little give and take to that too, because we were close together and hunting semi-risky winds. If deer got past us, they smelled us. So we were kind of like learning and burning on that. You know what I mean? Like we went in there to kill, because I don't know if we would have had success later, because we both killed that night, thankfully. But like I could foresee it really not being as good the second go around. So like on a situation like that, like you have to keep in mind, that's like a 9 out of 10 as far as like a risky set, and especially with double the guys in there. I mean, almost every deer that gets by you smells you, and you actually got smelled by a small bachelor group that night, right before you shot the big one.
Yeah, they came out, and I mean, if I wasn't going to shoot the deer, they were going to smell me pretty much. I mean, that was just the way it was. So, but they kind of peeled back, not back where they came from, but down a different direction, because the where they want to go is not where they came from, right? It's pretty much the opposite of where they came from. So they're going to work their way in a big loop back around to where they want to go, probably. So it didn't end up messing up, because I didn't mess up the buck that I shot, because that deer came out like 5 minutes later, and that's good. Deer. That's another thing. Deer blow when we're not there too. So that just happens. Deer are pretty used to it. So if a deer is bedded, 200 yards away, and it hears a deer blowing 30, 45 minutes later, that deer, he might still remember it. I've seen this happen. Actually, I shot a buck that was coming 45 minutes later, was coming to check out where a buck had blown at me from my wind. This is the year before last. And he's coming to check it out like 45 minutes later. And he comes basically from bedding straight towards this deer. And I mean, I shot him at like 3 yards. I mean, it's straight down, and he was on pins and needles, because he had known something was there, but he was still going to go up there and look, and then make his way out to feed, So it's something to like, it's part of that kind of optimism and that perseverance, that mentality is like, just because you get blown at, just don't give up. Like, don't just burn your hunt. Don't get on your phone, pay attention. Crazy things happen, man. KC says it all the time, but you got to give crazy a chance to happen, or something special a chance to happen.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes perfect, like that stuff's, whether it's coyotes or whatever, man, they're always blowing at stuff, and maybe it's not ideal, but like you said, it's definitely not over. And that other deer, if it's, upwind still, like it doesn't know exactly what's going on. And it sounds like that scenario, he was curious enough to at least try and sort out a little bit what was going on. And speaking of like blowing out deer, I mean, that goes into the, the hunt where you bump those deer again. Like, it's easy to be like, oh, we screwed up, it's over. It's like, man, no, you learned everything you needed to know right there. And, deer, I can't say that I've ever had I've had an instance where I almost killed a buck that way, but it worked for them, right? Like, you blew them out, but it worked, and so I think they like things that work, and they'll return to those spots because it worked. Yeah. And
especially before the rut, man. Like, those deer are so consistent. They've been doing the same thing for months. A lot of them, like, they want to go where they know the food is, and they've been there every night. So, if they get bumped, I mean, 3 days later, you might just catch them in the same spot,
Yeah. And I think that, in that situation too, it's like I heard this from somebody else, and I can't remember who it is recently. It might've been Eric was talking about this, and maybe he saw it somewhere. I don't know who to give credit to, is what I'm saying, but it wasn't my idea. But it's like, in our minds, when you bump a deer, it seems like a terrible thing, but to that deer, he just thinks he just won. He just got away and didn't die. Then he feels like it's a good place to be. And so I kind of had that going on. And then also I kind of coin terms sometimes that are real dumb, but I kind of have this thing called a soft bump, and those deer were soft bumped. They didn't smell me. They just knew that there was something going on, and they left out.
Well, a lot of times only one of them sees you too.
Yeah,
you know what
exactly.
I mean? So like the rest of them peel out of there because that deer's running, but they don't have a clue what just happened,
Now, if a deer sees, an abominable snowman stand up and try to shoot him and also gets a smell of you, it's a bad situation, right? But like, if you're a good number of yards away and those deer don't know what's going on, but they just think it's a better idea to leave, then, man, you have good confidence in going in there still and feeling like you can kill a deer.
Yeah, that's a good point. There are varying degrees of spooking from light to heavy.
Done plenty of both.
Yeah,
lots of heavy.
The other thing, you guys talked about some historical data, and I mean, man, I spend hours and hours and hours doing like digital scouting and couch scouting, whatever you want to call it, and I still learn the most by getting into a spot. Like, and I don't do enough of it. But man, that boots on the ground time is just where you learn the the nuances and the magic happens. And I've gone into spots like blind that I've only digitally scouted and seen deer, but you sure learn a lot when you get there. And then the other thing, man, calling at a distance. I mean, you called in that one deer with the horns like from a long ways out, and that's crazy to me that a deer would like respond. You know, that's a long ways to go to check something out, and that's cool. So
I couldn't believe it worked for sure, you know, but at the same time, as a hunter, it's good to have like an idea of how the deer act where you're hunting, and that's open country. And so it's a lot different than the hill country of southern Wisconsin, right? Where like you talking 500 yards, that's 3 ridges over. That deer ain't hearing you, you know. But like out there, those deer cover miles every night. I mean, like I don't know, we have documentation of deer traveling like 7 or 8 miles sometimes out there, you know, and that's just what they do because it's open country. They have to cover that ground to find resources or to find does or whatever. So that deer, you know, coming 500 yards over to see what was going on and see who was in his territory, it wasn't that big of a deal. You know?
And also, man, a big like hot tip, if we're talking about them in that situation. And I shot Nilgai antelope in Texas on public in January this year. And that video hopefully will come out in the next few months or so, but similar situation as this, where this buck was coming to investigate. He's going to try to work downwind, especially from distance like that. So if you're getting deer that come from long distance, I mean, they're going to try to get wind at least as they get closer, right? So it was really key that they ran like 80 yards downhill as soon as they couldn't see that buck anymore. They wouldn't have not got a shot at him if they hadn't done that, because basically that deer is coming, you know, the wind is blowing like this and this deer is over here. He's going to come and try to circle downwind of where he heard this sound. So you got to get downwind and meet him there. The same thing happened with that Nilgai. It was coming, fixing to get our wind. We moved like 15 yards and I was able to get a 40-yard shot at it before it got our wind. If you're ground hunting, it is a for sure thing to think about.
Being mobile is a good thing, especially when you're calling. And that was like the weird thing too, is like those deer, I don't know if they're that way out east too much, but like deer out in that open country are so good. Elk are the same way. They're so good at knowing like the little like garage sized area that sound came from. Like I think they can pinpoint it that way. And he knew exactly, he couldn't see what was going on up there, but he knew exactly where that rattling was coming from. And so to just not be in that little hot spot whenever he's approaching is a big deal. Now here's another
visually
thing
too, like he's going to be looking in a different spot.
He's looking, so you know where he's trying to get, so you can get in his way, especially if you can do it, you know, stealthily. And another thing in that situation too, and this works really good in open country in the mornings around daylight. It's pretty specific, but we've had this happen a few times. On northwest winds, your sun rises from the southeast in the winter because the sun's further down towards the equator, right? So that deer, when he looked towards us, couldn't see anything because the sun was in his eyes. So on a northwest wind with a southeast sun, it works out for him to try to do that. It was kind of like a weird situation, but like he was trying to loop around to get our wind because he was like at the opposite wrong spot. And because we had the sun to our backs, I could get away with being on one knee at 32 yards in the sage and just shooting this deer off the ground. Whereas if I had the sun in my eyes, it would be the inverse situation. I probably couldn't even see him, you know, to make a good shot.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that setup is key for sure. The last thing that I was going to point out, and I've benefited and then wished I'd done this, is you know, make those small adjustments. And it's hard, like you get your stand set, you get your platform set, whatever, and you know, and you had done that and you're just like, man, I don't like it. And you moved it probably a couple feet, I imagine.
Yeah, about 3 feet up higher, yeah.
And 3 feet, and just taking the time to do that, which can be a risk depending on time of day or what's going on. But that was the difference between getting a buck or not. And I mean, last year, even though I didn't get that buck that I shot at, I got fully set up and was like, I don't like it. And I moved 10 yards, and it made the difference on at least getting an opportunity at that buck. And then the year prior, I had set up and I did the same thing. I'm like, I set up, I thought I was in a good spot, and I had some deer come by, but most of the deer were probably, 20 yards away, but it was too thick and I couldn't shoot into or over the brush that those deer went. So I moved 10 yards, which was a pain. It's always a pain to change your set, and up the tree I went, and then I ended up getting that buck that afternoon. So those little changes that are a pain are oftentimes worth making, and if you're thinking about it, you're probably thinking about it for a reason.
Yeah.
Dude, the details make the difference, man.
He's the master at this stuff. Tyler will, and I'm kind of the guy who just makes a snap decision and has to do the changing. This dude will like stand on the ground in an afternoon setup. He gets there plenty early and in the morning too. I guess he gets there super early in the dark, looks at his map, looks at his headlamp, or gets his headlamp on the trees, and he'll stand there for 20 minutes thinking about the trees and the situations. And he usually always ends up making a really good decision about which tree to get in. And so it's like you take the situations that you and I were in, and then you can just learn from those and apply that. And maybe it sounds like, I don't know how you operate, but I move kind of fast, right? So like a thing you can learn is like take that one step further and just evaluate what you've done in the past, like he does, and then just make a good decision in the first place. And then you don't have to be like me and you and get all sweaty climbing down a tree. You know?
Actually, I generally stand on the ground with tree paralysis for about a half hour, and then get set up, and then go, nope, I want to move.
Yeah, dude, it's important though. The tree is important, man. It's not to me the ability to get shots out of that tree to where you need to get them, to where you think the deer is going to be, that are advantageous shots, is like key. It's number one. Like I will choose it over cover every time. Pretty much I'll choose getting shots out of the tree, because really the main kicker that deer see is not you in a tree as much as they see a movement in the tree. So if you got to draw your bow, that it may be too late for that deer at that point. For him, he sees you draw at the last second, man. If it's a 10-yard shot and there's no limbs in the way, you're literally drawing straight through, right? Like you don't have to knock or, get your knocking points all, everything in line. I mean, it's just draw straight through and you're there. It's almost like shooting a recurve. I mean, he saw that happen in Oklahoma in 2021 when he shot that deer at close range and near that cattle pen, because, it's so close, man. It's such an easy shot.
When the pin settles, you make it go off. You know what? You don't have to hold for 5 seconds just to make sure you lose your breath and get excited. Like it's like an instinctive thing. It's pop. And they're dead.
Picking the right tree in the right spot is key, man. So I've sat there for long periods of time and just thought about so many scenarios and everything. And you fail a lot, especially early as you start doing this stuff, this like hanging hunt type stuff, and you get better at it, but you're going to always fail. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier, where like, if we didn't fail some, then it would be cake. It'd be like walking down the street. I don't really go out walking down the street just to have fun. In fact, I don't even hike for fun. Like, I have to have a mission at the end of this thing or something, you know what I mean, to give me a challenge.
Yeah.
So, because I've been walking my whole life, and I do it pretty successfully, in fact, right now, so
there's a reason why Jordan went and played baseball, like he was like, I got to find something new to conquer.
Y'all too easy, man.
That's it. That's it. I had no Jordan. So I'm still after the deer woods.
Sure.
I hadn't had to go find something else to do.
Nope, for sure, guys. Well, man, hey, I appreciate the time. This has been a super fun conversation. Just great visiting with you guys. At recording time right now, we're getting pretty close to a new deer season on the horizon. I mean, heck, it's August right now. Deer season's kicked off in a few states, for goodness sakes. So, looking forward to seeing what you guys have on this season's horizon. Sounds like folks can still check out some stuff from last year that hasn't hit yet, so check that out on the MeatEater website. And yeah, before we sign off here, I mean, any tidbits of plans that you guys have coming down the pike that people can look forward to in a little bit?
Yeah, sure, man. We actually leave in 2 days to go antelope hunting for the first time ever for both of us. So kind of excited about that. I don't really know how to feel, because I feel like as far as big game animals, they're the most different than any of the other ones. You know what I mean? So like we have a buddy who has done it for a while. We're going to go hunt with him and hopefully get a little bit of local knowledge on there, but it's going to be pretty glassing intensive, I think, spot and stalk on the ground with bows. So, that's kind of what our next thing coming up as far as hunts go.
Is. We'll have some elk, do some elk stuff. We'll which is exciting. He's shot a couple bulls on like OTC units and stuff, but I've been on several hunts and never actually been able to pull the trigger. So looking forward to that. We're going to be hunting deer all over the country again. Mostly this year, it's going to be a little more like we used to do things where we hunt together some, we hunt separate some. I don't have to, give Mark Kenyon a spot all the time, that kind of thing. But no, I mean, and I love to talk like that about people that can't defend themselves. But, no, we love Mark and a lot of the people we work with are great, man. There at MeatEater, it's been a huge blessing, and to be able to, I would just emphasize what KC said earlier, that Vortex, man, I really appreciate you guys, and I have over the years, what you guys offer, what you guys put out, just always being friendly, man. Like, you guys are just so easy to work with there. It's really something that we value and appreciate, because at the end of the day, you could pay me a lot of money and I still wouldn't want to deal with somebody, that I didn't enjoy hanging out with or I couldn't share the woods with, a lot of times. So
it can suck the wind out of everything. That's for sure. So, no, man, we appreciate you guys as well. Sounds like you need a couple more trucks, antelope truck, elk truck, buck truck.
Yeah. If you have any contacts in Dodge or Chevy or Ford,
but
send those our way for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
What about you? What you got on the docket, man?
Oh man, let's see. I am gonna leave here in a little bit to hunt alpine bears with a buddy of mine. So go ahead. I'm originally from Washington State, so gonna head back home and chase bears around in the high country. So really looking forward to that. And I mean, I don't know. I love hunting bears. I just think they're cool animals. I love where they live, and that alpine country it's special country. So really looking forward to that. Got an elk hunt this year, and then really trying to focus a lot on whitetails at home. Like I'm always like, oh, greener grass, try and go here, try and go there, try and do that. And I'm like, man, like there's not much more fun of a thing than hunting whitetails with the bow. So I'm going to try and dedicate some quality time to that this year, which I don't neglect, but I don't spend as much time doing it as I'd like to. So I'm pumped about that.
So when you say at home, you mean Wisconsin?
Yeah, my other home, I guess. Yeah, home in Wisconsin. Yeah.
So, well, that's a pretty good home to have if you're a whitetail hunter, for sure.
It is. We kill a lot of deer in the state, and somehow there's a lot of deer left. So it's we're pretty fortunate.
Yeah.
It's all that dairy country. It's good for deer too.
Yeah, right.
Cheese carrots makes them big.
That's right, man. Protein, man.
But well, cool guys. Well, good luck this fall. Keep us posted. We'll do the same from our end, and hopefully we're texting some photos back and forth here. So
yeah, absolutely, man. Dude. Appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Mark.
All right, take care, guys. Good luck out there.
See you, man.
All right, that wraps it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. This was a fun one. You're either in your season or about to have your season, so good luck this season. And, let's see your pictures as well. Take care. Bye.
There you have it, folks. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, give this video a like if you liked it, comment something below, and give us a subscribe to the Vortex Nation podcast channel. It would mean a lot to us. Also, why don't you give us a follow over on Instagram while you're at it, at Vortex Nation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you over there, and we'll keep you updated with all kinds of cool photos and videos from our adventures that we do here. Otherwise, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again. Happy hunting and shooting, everybody. Have a good one.